What do you think are going to be some of the main kind of changes that we're going to see impacting the job seeker and then market in 2025?
First one is I think it's going to be more AI-centric technology for candidates. I think so. Everything from job trackers to having a Chrome extension to help you fill out a Workday application. Second is job boards might start having shopping carts now, and I think you'll be able to add certain jobs to a basket that you like, and then you can just apply to all the jobs in one go that you like. The other one I like to see, maybe is the desire I've mentioned, is the second to last one is around candidate match score.
Yeah. And what's your last one?
The last one is the big one.
The Open to Work podcast is back. Thank you so much for joining us for another series. We know that January is such an important time for your job search. And so we are here and we're going to be alongside you with expert advice from leading recruiters and business people from around the world to help you navigate this super challenging job market. The mission is the same. We're back. I'm here. My name's Matthew Parker, and we're ready for another series of the Open to Work podcast. So without any further ado, let me introduce our guest for today, Darren Bush. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks very much. Obviously, big fan as well, long-time follower, and hopefully long-time friend as well in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Pleasure meeting you for having had a virtual relationship over LinkedIn for the last couple of years to then meet in person last year was a real highlight. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you via the podcast as well over the coming kind of hour. Let's start off with who you are, right? So you come from you have an amazing talent acquisition background. I'll let you introduce yourself, but Darren Bush, tell me about yourself.
Yeah. So my kind of background goes to 20 years ago, I'd say. I worked as a recruiter, and I chose to be a recruiter.
You didn't fall
trade.
into it like
I
everyone
didn't
else.
fall into it. No, I chose it, and I was quite proud. Yeah, I chose it. I used to work in banking and financial services, and I wanted to work in a place where I can actually what I did had an impact. So and straight away I can make an impact straight away. So and that happened within recruitment. And knowing the space. So I worked in 4 years with Michael Page, and then from then I've worked in a number of different jobs, either relating to recruitment itself, doing recruiting, or technology itself, or within the technology space. And then about 5 years ago, I moved to Ericsson, which is where I am now, and I was working on transformation projects within how we can actually redefine and change our recruitment landscape within Ericsson. It's an ongoing project. I'd say it's not something you do within 1 year, 2 years to finish, but I worked on that for a couple of years. And then most recently, the last 2 years, I'm in an operational role. I look after was group functions, global operations as a unit within Ericsson, and I'm the head of TA for that for the last 2 years.
Amazing. Just so I get a sense of the size and scale, how many people will be hired through your function within a standard year, like as an estimate?
So the range will be anything. The largest will be in a year. The biggest we had is about 29,000 in a year.
Wow. Okay.
And our lowest might be say 13,000. So anything between that scale, depending on our growth in that year.
Yeah. So you will touch the best part of 500,000 job seekers over the next year.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes, definitely around 600, 700,000. I think apply through our database every year.
Okay, so we've established that when it comes to talent acquisition, you somewhat know what you're talking about at the very least.
Yeah, so I do. Yeah, I do. Luckily, I have a role that I can fortunately see everything on that side, from talent attraction to from the candidate experience to even the hiring manager experience. So yeah, you get to see everything.
Yeah, and you've recently launched a new product business. Tell me a bit about the Get Hired toolkit.
Yeah, so I've launched this website at the moment, which is the reason I did it was myself in terms of when you're looking for a job, you always you see some really good posts, really good information, and unfortunately, there's also a lot of misinformation and poor information out there, clickbait, whatever you want to call it, stuff like beat the ATS, and a lot of my posts were littered with that. But there were some really good quality content, and what I saw was there's a chance for kind of just like tagging it and bookmarking that content, and that's what I did over a 6-month period. I started bookmarking all the good posts written about from job searching to applying to updating your CV or writing a cover letter, which people still do require, even though people sort of say you don't, but there's some companies that do. So I would tag it and I'd bookmark it, and then over time I saw this really good repository that I thought that I could share this with everyone else. So I've put it on the website, and I've created put a framework and said there's 9, it's not 9 stages, but there's 9 different sections within within the actual website. And you can, if you're looking for job searching, you're struggling in that part of the funnel, you can go there, and there'll be all the posts, including yourself, Matthew. You're on there, and the Open to Work as well. I think you've got a couple of newsletters posts are on there, so you can actually click in and read the information and get get everything you want related to that area you're struggling with.
And I think the main message to come out of like this from me was like, not all content about job search is created equally, and and our kind of philosophies are really aligned. Like this podcast was created out of a frustration for the poor quality of content that we were seeing that was advising job seekers and potentially negatively impacting job seekers. And I think that the Get Hired Toolkit is really sitting within a similar ethos as the Open to Work podcast and community platform, and we're delighted with the partnership in our newsletter that we're doing with you as well. So yeah, really excited and for kind of the future of the Get Hired Toolkit. So now let's talk about the job market. So as you reflect on kind of last year in just a kind of a couple of words, like how would you summarize the job market for job seekers and the candidate market last year?
So I think we all, beginning of 2024, expected it to be a little bit more buoyant. When looking back, I think 2023 was a tough year, and I'd say on reflection, 2024 was tight. It was very stable, very static. It was like a flat market. I think even at Ericsson, we experienced the same as well. So I think from our side, it hasn't picked up, and therefore the expectations 2025 it will go. There are a number of things I think people wanted to happen, like, in terms of salary disclosure, be able to see more salaries obviously displayed on we started to see that in the US, but maybe across the globe as well, start seeing salaries on there. That was what people had. I don't think it has changed that much. And then I'd say there are a lot of candidates, there's a lot of talk about AI, and a lot of, I'd say, candidates are starting to use it. It's probably the first time we've been in a market where candidates had the advantage before potentially the companies. The companies were slow to adopt. In the past, it's always been the companies have got tools, have got tech their side that helps them manage that process. And this is the first in 2024 felt for me that we kind of was addressing the balance a little bit, where candidates were kind of using ChatGPT now to help them write them with interview questions or I had one, for example, one friend who went for an interview and he put his CV and job ad and put everything into ChatGPT. And in the interview, 3 questions, word for word, came out from the hiring manager there, which you would never have that before. No. You would have seen that. So we're starting to see, and we've seen the grad market, that's changing as well. A lot of them are kind of using it. So I'd say people would sort of putting their toe in the water there. I'd say that for 2024, for me, that was my reflection. I think we probably predicted to be bigger. But yeah, that's my view on it.
Yeah, and I would agree. Like the use of AI, whether real or not, by companies is less than the candidate market is being used. Definitely. Less than the candidate market is using it. You're absolutely right. Yeah. There's a technology imbalance. Yeah. Not necessarily is the way that the candidate is using it exclusively good. So, for example, one of the big reflections I think of last year is overwhelming application volumes. You're getting through, the best part of 750,000 applications for 20,000 jobs, right? So there's a huge imbalance there. But when it comes to interview preparation, this tool is and the use of AI has fundamentally changed the game and is probably the best use of this live right now. And also I can definitely tell you that companies are using it on the other side, as you've just pointed out. Companies are going into ChatGPT and asking them to write questions for them and using those questions in interviews. And so it's a really good way for you to get ahead of the game, which you didn't have access to unless you were doing a lot of job search, research before. Now is a very easy way to get that information, which you never had access to before.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I think maybe that leads on to the predictions for this year. So. And
so that kind of brings us on to kind of the main topic for today. We're sitting here on January 3rd, really important time for job seekers. So Darren, what do you think are going to be some of the main trends or kind of changes that we're going to see impacting the job seeker and the market in 2025? Alderson James are one of the leading people and talent agencies. Since 2013, they've been responsible for over 1,000 people and talent hires, including one in a company that I used to work at. They helped me hire my head of technology TX. So I know the guys there pretty well. They've been responsible for scaling some of the most innovative companies in the UK and the EU. Also recently just launched in the US. So even folks in your neck of the woods now, James, can get involved for contingent, retained, and executive search. And they also now do embedded through AJX. So they can do it all.
Cool. So the first one, so I got about 6. So I'll go with the first one. So it'll be quick. Let's go through it. First one is, I think it's going to be more AI-centric technology for candidates. I think candidates are going to use it. I think the adoption of that technology is going to increase. So everything from job trackers to having a Chrome extension to help you fill out, a Workday application. I think people are going to be using those kind of tools. So I think that's the first thing. I think that's going to be definitely an increase in that. Second is job boards might start having shopping carts now. The concept of shopping carts. So you can go in and click on a job that you like. Before you could favorite, but you could add to a basket. And I think you'll be able to add certain jobs to a basket that you like, and then you can just apply to all the jobs in one go that you like. So kind of the step before, you've got these auto applications where you can apply hundreds, but it's kind of being more tailored. Like the ones I've picked out and then I've added in, and those are the ones I want to apply to, making that process just a little bit easier for you. We start to see it with 1 or 2 job boards already offering that service. I think that will start happening in the future. The other one I like to see, maybe it's the desire I've mentioned, is I've had this concept of a candidate waiting time, which is a KPI that wanted companies to start measuring and candidates itself, which is, as a candidate, when was the last time I was spoken to about a role? So what's the waiting time I've had for it? And I expect candidates now to be potentially pushing the message out and saying, it's been 17 days now since I've last spoken to. I'll be publishing my candidate waiting time is 17 days or 27 days, whatever it may be. And I like more candidates now to sort of put pressure on companies that they start tracking it, because it is a really hard one to track for a company itself. And then the other one is and we obviously have a sponsor here for this podcast, which is around AI interview note taking. So having better interview guides for the companies themselves, they'll have more, say, structured interviews, but they'll be recording the interviews. And those interviews will be recorded and those notes will be kept within the company. But I see that candidates may want to start actually having access to those notes. If you're recording it, can I have a copy of the recording as well? Why can't I have a copy of the recording? And I think as an industry, we need to change that and say we need to put a rule in 4 weeks, for example, because we don't want to give unfair advantage to individuals who might potentially share those recordings with other people and know what kind of questions are coming up. So I expect that to sort of, I think that will happen as well in the market. And then the second to last one is around candidate match score.
Yeah.
So there are certain sites when you go on now where you can actually you can upload your CV and the job ad itself, and it will give you a match score out of 100 typically. And it will say whether you got 60 or you're 87, you're close in terms of the line to that role. The problem with these match scores is it's very much written on the job advert. And as we know, job adverts are pretty poor. They're used old templates. They're not real clear description of what the person will be doing. I think in the future it'd be great. Well, this year, sorry, I need to say, this year companies will, people that are sponsored the Hire Guide have more of a hiring criteria. Yeah. And that if they can share that hiring criteria, not maybe publicly, but behind the scenes. So when you upload your CV, you'll be able to, as a candidate, you get a match score now. So if you get something that's under 50, would you apply? Would you actually apply to those roles? And it might make you either rethink, I need to change my CV, which is not really the purpose. Is me rethinking, actually think, well, I need to go and find a role where I am a more of a match score to the one the position I'm applying for.
Mm-hmm. And what's the last one?
The last one is a big one. It's very, very much what we spoke about before, which is around ghosting. I think there's going to be a reduction of ghosting next year or this year, and maybe because the market will change a little bit. But also, I think there'll be more talk about how we can improve ghosting with companies. Mm-hmm. I think that will come out. I don't expect this to happen in the next 2 quarters, 3 quarters, but towards Q4, I think more companies. I think the candidate waiting time plays onto that. It's highlight where you've been ghosted. The companies are using, being ghosted, ghosting candidates. But I think when we, this is a topic for maybe another conversation, but my view is that it's sometimes it's a process problem as well. And if you have match score where candidates aren't applying to 100 roles
Yeah.
because they're not relevant for, if you can reduce the amount of irrelevant applications, that really does still help
Yeah.
companies massively.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you have like a number of different kind of your points there are all layered into using technology to reduce and focus the application volume that you're getting, which I think will also tie into things like EVP as well. There'll be just like the reality is that behind the scenes, as a recruit in a recruiting organization, we are like overwhelmed with job applications that are mostly irrelevant a lot of the time. And so from like a process perspective, like part of the reason that you're getting ghosted, which all ties in together, is because our recruiters are also having to spend time going back to all the people who applied who had a match score, like, who are not relevant, essentially. And the rough statistic that people keep throwing out there is about 75% of people who apply are completely irrelevant and don't have any of the skills needed in the job description. All of those, like the first two, both link into. If you remind me what they are again, let's talk about the first two and then also the job matching score, because I think they're all really interlinked.
Yeah, you're right. It's honestly, if people know me, I am very tech focused, and I realize they are very tech aligned. So the first one was around candidate centric technology. Yeah. So that was they're going to be using more tools now.
So that's saying that there'll be more tools available to candidates to be able to make their kind of applications better or more specific. I think this is the whole like candidate technology space is a challenge because not all of, like we said at the top of the podcast, not all of these technologies are created equally. They're not all here with to serve you in the way that you think you should be served, i.e. like something that's trying to create how do you know that the ATS score that you're getting, which is something that I don't believe in at all. ATS scores are completely BS, but why is that different to a job match score? And who is running that process, and why would I believe one and not the other? And these two things will come conflated and weaponized to be able to take money out of candidates' pockets. Like CV writing tools are the same; they are like completely weaponized to take money out of the pockets of people who are not working and are in a vulnerable situation. And I think that we need to be really thoughtful with the technologies that we are like supporting and not supporting. And that's why I really like that you kind of highlighted there the idea of a job tracker. Like Teal has a great job tracker. I've no relationship with Teal whatsoever, but their job tracker is really good. And it makes it a lot easier for you to understand what you're doing, what the data points are, the signal to noise, like the one that you brought out and the one that I've brought out as well. Like they both help you understand and track what you're doing. And we'll just see those sorts of process elements be much more productized. And that'll be the ones that other recruiting leaders come out and advocate for, not like an ATS beta writing tool or whatever is the kind of the negative trends that we'll see on the other side of that as well.
And I see more candidates using the interview AI, kind of like the avatar agent, like where they can actually even if they can actually get the questions that they believe they're going to be asked based on the job advert and obviously their CV, and they can practice using the star framework, whatever they can do, really anything related to that role. They can just kind of practice out loud. There's nothing better than speaking out loud and kind of hearing yourself do that. So those tools are really useful for that out there in the market.
We are so excited to be sponsored by HireGuide. HireGuide is an end-to-end interview decision platform that makes hiring decisions faster, fairer, and twice as predictive of on-the-job employee performance. As a recruiting leader, I've been looking for a tool that can help me run better interviews across my organization at scale to make better hiring decisions. So when I found HireGuide, I felt all my hopes had been answered. They use cutting-edge AI and behavioral science to enable you to operationalize structured interviews and skills-based hiring that can help you find those star candidates. Hiring a dream team is no easy task, but with HireGuide, it can be.
And then so the job match score is super interesting. I really, because it also relays into like the shopping cart and stuff like that. And Indeed are bringing out some updates that are going to already start doing this. Like they're really going to customize and hyper customize like the jobs that it thinks you're relevant for. And you're right. And I think AI will enable those sorts of technologies to improve at like an exponential rate over the next like year or two, to the extent that it will drive us. And one of my predictions was that we'll be like driving towards an agentic AI-led recruiting market, i.e., you will work with an Indeed or a LinkedIn bot, and they will proactively manage and you or like engage with you or recommend things to you in a slightly different way with a slightly different interface, that will be based around the skills that you are giving it and updating with it all the time, and your CV and stuff like that. And so like it, and I think that is starting like now, or slash has already started. But with those job matching scores, I think they will see that translate into from the job boards will have to solve that problem first, because otherwise, I, as the buyer, as the recruiting leader, won't want to buy their product anymore, because volume. They used to make their money. The volume of job applications, especially Indeed, is a pay-per-click model, and they just can't. No one is going to buy that now. They will definitely get their clicks, so they have to evolve, and that's what's happening now.
Yeah, and then maybe it's a good thing. Maybe the fact that we're going to have lots of applications, and it's going to change the market, because you're right. It's on a pay-per-click model. They need to move to quality. Quality of applications, and that was my view last year, which is the job match score could be used instead of the pay-per-click. It's the case that I should get paid. I should be paying as a company a premium for anyone who's over 80 score, and I want to see those candidates. Anyone under 80, I should be paying like pittance of like cents on the dollar for those, and therefore Indeed needs to go out and say, well, we need to find better candidates out there who can match you for the roles, and that's what their job should be. That's what you should do as a job board.
But they've not been incentivized to do that. Because of their pay-per-click model, which they've been successful, they've only had to force themselves to change their model now, which they're doing over the next year or so. Because companies like you and me are going, we don't want your applications because they're mostly rubbish. And so until you can go and find a way to bring me better applications, I'm not going to bother paying for your product. And small businesses around the world as well are going to be feeling that, and big businesses around the world who indeed need to be successful are absolutely saying that every single day to Indeed. And I think LinkedIn is like almost the same. Like our LinkedIn stats are like mostly irrelevant. I think when I look at our like application per source, Indeed is absolutely the worst. But only then after that is LinkedIn is only slightly better than that.
Okay, yeah, I'll say LinkedIn's been pretty good for us as a source.
Aside from sourcing.
So as a source of hire, not for sourcing. Obviously, is a very good for sourcing as well. But it has been pretty good for us as a place, mainly because I think the brand helps. I think the bigger the brand, more attraction it is, and therefore you get more applications. The lower in terms of when you get brands on brand scale, when you're like a SME or startup or anything like that, and a company you don't know, it's much, much harder. I think you're then LinkedIn. I think will compete to Indeed, and we saw that when I did a study like 3 or 4 years ago with a company that created like the job match scores, and what they found is the brands like the Nikes, the Amazon, they were getting way more applications and way more irrelevant applications. Funny enough, theirs was going up to like 80% irrelevant applications, but then a brand that you wouldn't know or didn't come across, a B2B brand, for example. They were getting like 60, 65% irrelevant applications, and obviously fewer because people wouldn't know their name.
Yeah, because there'll be this, I think like when we summarize all of this is like the marketplace for the use of AI as it relates to both the top of funnel and then the mid funnel for recruiting, i.e. like your applications and then how you're managed through that is going to fundamentally move forward this year in some regard, i.e. companies will have to find a way to deal with irrelevant applications. So that means they might be introducing AIs that screen out candidates and introduce on the back end a non-visible scoring mechanism, which some of them already do, and that will get better and better and better. And they'll be forced to invest in stuff like that now. And then also equally, the kind of marketplace on the candidate side will be forced to improve because it will be otherwise candidates will stop using them. So I think we'll see this, and I predicted this for a long time. This arms race will continue to move forward, and we will have to find a way as like recruiting leaders to continue to identify new ways to not put barriers in our top of funnel, but to your point, encourage candidates to really think about whether or not they're going to self-select in or out of a process earlier in that application journey. So investing in the EVP, employee value proposition, and the brand of that business will become even more important.
Yeah, I have a question about the AI. Actually, one of the things we haven't spoken about is I've seen obviously a number of companies now offering AI screening tools, whether it be AI avatar or or in terms of voice AI as well, calling up. I expect this will grow. What's your view on this for next year?
For next year, I don't think it'll be particularly widespread outside of like high volume applications. So like if you're applying for a role like in a retail store or whatever, you might do like a phone call with a bot first. And I think that's like things like Scotty AI are broadly quite widespread already. When you look at the enterprise level that they are working at for such a like a quote unquote cutting edge technology, that they've been well adopted, I think, and have got really good use cases. I think at the white collar level, I don't think that we'll see businesses moved like that just yet. It's such a new shape for us.
Do you think it'll happen though?
Yeah, I think at some point, I think we'll see white collar screenings, top of funnel screenings for certain roles for sure.
Yeah, it's just interesting, like what you said about that will happen for the companies, and then on the candidate side, I don't know what will happen to combat that, to overcome those problems as well.
But they'll have to, you mentioned this power balance, and there's I don't think that it's fair to say that there's a power increase on the candidate side, because I think this is a result of the power balance decreasing on the candidate side. But there is more technology enabled that's putting more pressure on companies, and that is going to be really difficult to manage over the next year until companies can completely take control of who is getting through their funnel again. And they will have to be laser focused with trying to find ways to solve that, and a product that can genuinely crack that. I've not seen any product at all that can do what I would need it to do as a leader. Otherwise I would have bought it. And I think we're still very early, and there's also, I think, a number of legal issues with how, when you allow an AI to make a decision on who is progressed or not, that is a really big decision for a company to allow to happen from a legal perspective that in many states around the world is illegal, especially in the US. And so this idea, firstly, that the idea that an AI can reject your CV, I think there's always been BS, and I think it will remain BS for the foreseeable. But at some point, I think there might be a flipping point. I don't think it'll be this year, but I think it will be soonish that we will allow an AI to make a decision around who progresses or doesn't progress from a first round or first virtual screen interview.
Interested to hear about your other predictions. That was your first one.
I had a couple of broader comments that are around the job market being more stable than it was last year, broadly speaking. I think we see more and more recruiters. There are much fewer recruiters in my network who are looking for work now than there was last year, for sure.
Definitely.
But a massive order of magnitude, I would say. And so that's really positive. When there are fewer recruiters who are available for work, that should be a really good sign for the candidate market. It means that businesses, I think, keep investing next year. So that's really positive. I think we'll still see very, very peaky hiring plans. If I look at ours, it's really not going to be as stable. It's going to be, January is going to be a huge bump, and then it's going to drop massively down as companies evaluate their performance throughout the year, and then it will bump up again. So it'll be really performance oriented hiring, which it should be, but it will mean that it will be harder, really competitive around short bursts potentially for candidates. I think in the UK especially, we'll see a stagnation of salary growth. I think we probably already have seen a stagnation of salary growth over the last few years, but especially with the increase in employers' national insurance contributions, I think that will just end up falling onto the candidate, unless you are in the top 1 or 2%. You will, I think, generally speaking, will end up seeing less competitive salaries. Which I think we already saw throughout last year. Unless you were a tier 1 performer as a software engineer or product leader, you probably were getting hit somewhere in your package. And I think, ultimately, I think it's going to continue to be a relatively tough year for candidates, for job seekers, with super competitive processes and really strong candidate availability. The last one I think I would add, though, is I think we'll see a really big rise in fake candidates getting jobs, and then and broader speaking, fraud in the candidate space. We haven't talked about this as much on the podcast, but I know quite a few recruitment leaders are really nervous about the number of people they've hired last year who had essentially committed fraud, who had used ChatGPT or similar tools to get their way all the way through the process, get really good jobs, and then not actually be able to deliver any of the skills that they were doing. They say they are. And I'm not saying that as a Joe Blogs off the street who's trying his best to get a job. I'm saying a system of fraud that is occurring at scale, where groups are trying to rip off and create and take money out of companies through being hired as a fake employee.
I'd say that there's that as well, and candidates probably massaging their CV a little bit. So job titles, the experience, and I think there's going to be issues where companies are going to get to the background checks and vetting. And if you don't have that in place, don't have strong background checks and vetting in there, candidates will be able to get through the door and say, I changed like a job title, I changed like a lot of my experience, and I coached myself in terms of, what to say for those roles.
Yeah.
And if they're getting hired, then they're just going to share that with their friends as well. So my concern is I think there's going to be a growth then, or kind of more scrutiny on background checks. And then what do you do in those situations if you come across candidates, you've got through that stage, and they've aced the interviews and got through and they've offered, and all of a sudden you find they're not that candidate you expected, or they didn't do those roles. You're going to have those difficult conversations.
I think that, if I would ask yourself that as like a recruiting leader, like if you one of the things that we will track for sure and Muse, and imagine that you will at Ericsson, is like, what's your attrition in the first 6 months? And if you start to see that get too high, that is literally your responsibility as a recruiting leader to try and solve that problem. Like, why are so many people getting through our interview process? What is something that we can do to change or evolve that interview process to make it a more representative of the job that they're going to do, and assessing the skill sets that we're looking for at scale? And that is something that, so I think when you look at like fraudulent, like job people getting jobs, or people who are massaging their CV, like in theory, if you run a good enough, or you build a good enough system of recruiting within an assessment within your business, it shouldn't happen that much.
Definitely.
But I imagine that we'll be monitoring that like an absolute hawk this year, to ensure that there is no because every single time that someone attrits in the first 6 months or leaves in the first 6 months, as a result of us not misassessing them, that has cost the business a lot of money, of time and effort and training and all that sort of stuff, and salary. And it's our job to help solve that problem.
Yeah. So
the other one that you mentioned there at the end was ghosting, which is super interesting, and I'd love to get into that in a bit more detail. Maybe reframe like the kind of desire there from that, or that prediction.
So it's probably twofold. As one is that what we want to expect candidates are going to be start monitoring their waiting time, how long they've been waiting for. So a lot of times you hear like, I've been ghosted, but if you start putting a number to it, I've applied to this role, this company, and it's 67 days or something since I've heard back. And, you could start seeing people kind of have a ridiculous number. It's been 190 days now, people try posting that kind of thing on applications. I think drawing more attention to that, the fact that I haven't been hearing back from the company. So there's that on that one side. Second, on the ghosting side, I'd see more from companies doing more with their systems and their processes to ensure that they are getting back. Something we've done here at Ericsson is we've changed it. We've automated a number of steps. The recruiters can't move people to the next step unless they're the right listing. If they're not right for the role, they get rejected, and they get rejected there and then, and they get notified. That, unfortunately, I would say that wasn't in place.
So tell me a bit more about what you mean there. Sorry.
So you get the short. So when people apply, you get a long list of candidates. You got a candidate. You are trying to get to a long list. So you, as a recruiter, you want to get through and start screening people. Now, what my theory is with ghosting is, you get about anything, say 60, 70 applications, say, for a role, and you get a large number, and of which you'll go through and you'll just, as a recruiter, because this is probably every role has got a large number of applications, you'll screen them, but you won't reject them. So you'll go, it'll be like a no mentally in your head, no. And then you get to a yes. And at that point, you'll go, yes, I'll move that person. I'll put them start putting into my shortlist. And the no's don't get told they're a no, because what happens is we're watching it, is that recruiters are kind of like, it's quicker to do that process. They're kind of no. They're like a no stroke maybe. So you got 50% you now on the no list in a bucket, and I'm not going to do anything with them. I'm not going to reject them. I'm just going to keep them there. And I'm going to move anyone else who is right for the role all the way through. And so if you're not hearing anything after 2-3 weeks of a role, you've applied to a company where the recruiter's doing that, in my opinion. It's maybe a controversial opinion, but that is my opinion, that I believe you're on a no list. You as a recruiter have just knowed mentally, but you've not done it in the system. And therefore you've moved anyone else who is relevant for that role into an interview stage with a recruiter, or interview stage with a hiring manager or hiring team. And then as soon as the person is identified and hired, then they will reject everyone in one go.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe is one of the biggest problems of ghosting.
Look, I've got like a weird little hot take, and I absolutely don't believe in this at scale, right? But as like I'm not talking about this as like as like a head of TA. I'm talking about this as a candidate.
Yeah.
I actually don't really care that much if I get a rejection email from my application. Unless I've put in like a lot of effort into that application, I don't think that the problem with ghosting is I don't get like a message back when at application stage. The problem with ghosting, I feel, is further through the funnel. Where you start to have those conversations and you're getting, at some point in that conversation, for some reason, they've stopped talking to you. That is where I feel the biggest problem is, because sure, yes, you should get an application, you should get rejected from a role that you apply to, like, yes. And you're absolutely right. Like, if you're a recruiter listening to this, reject the candidate when they apply. When you first read their CV, I can make sure you go through all the applications and recruiting leaders hold your team accountable to that. But the one that's more emotionally strenuous is if I've had a conversation with a recruiter or a hiring manager and I get sat in a holding pattern for 2 or 3 weeks and I have no idea what's happened from them. And that is a much bigger problem, I think.
It is, yeah. And I don't kind of explain why that happens on such a large scale. I think one of the things is it's not a binary recruitment. People kind of say that it's very much a binary yes or no. Unfortunately, there is a maybe. There is always that maybe, and what people do is they put you in the maybe pile, and they won't reject you. And I even we talk as recruiters about maybe. I hear hiring managers say, "Can you just keep that candidate warm?" And they say that. That means that they're a maybe. We'll keep them up, but I'm looking for something better. At the time, and at that point when I do have a hiring manager say that, I'm like, you only reject them because do you really want to be hiring someone you're not 100% sure about? They're a no, and
you either challenge them you challenge them into the action, like either they're a no, or what is it more that you would need to see from that person to be able to make a decision, and let's set up an extra 30-minute call. Yeah,
it is, and if it's their view and they come back and say, I want to see someone else, it's like, well, that person's not right then for that role. You shouldn't be comparing the candidates. You should be comparing that candidate against the role. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. The role is your kind of the indicator if that person can do that. And you're saying they can't do that. That's a no. We'll find someone else who do it.
Systemic misunderstanding of how to make decisions is the cause of. You're absolutely right. Like you shouldn't need to be able to compare and contrast candidates to be able to make a decision. It's better. It's like ideal if you have multiple candidates to be able to make a final decision against, but you should understand the skills that you're looking for enough as a hiring leader to be able to make that final decision based on how you brief and understand the role, understand the skills of what you're looking for. Like that, you are the problem if you don't know what those things are as the hiring leader, not like the recruiter. A lot of the time when I speak to my recruiters around why is this person sitting in the funnel still and they've not been contacted or they've not been moved forward for 2 weeks or rejected for 2 weeks, it's the hiring manager that is causing the delay somehow. Like they haven't been able to go and talk to the recruiter. They haven't been able to go and find time in their diary. They've been processing other things. They've been on holiday. And I think we can do a better job as a system of hey, just letting you know this is where you're up to and do a little check-in. And that should be commonplace. I'd love to see that being commonplace in recruiting around the world. But the reality is that it's often that the recruiter is waiting for feedback from someone based on the decision that they've made, not that they've known that person, made the decision it's a no, and then they've just sat in a funnel. That happens much fewer amount of the times, I would suggest, than them actually waiting for the decision. And then they might feel a bit awkward about rejecting them because it's been 2 weeks and it's stacked up and they don't really feel like they want to go back to them and they feel a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that does happen, I imagine, as well. And they don't, and then they think best thing to do is just not call them or email them, because they're worried about the backlash or and often the feedback you get is just where you chose a hiring manager and says they're clearly a no. The manager has concerns. There's not great amount of information to go back to the candidate. That's with that
another really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the other problem, and that is the fact is you need better interviewing guides, structured interviews, and evaluation in that process, because at that point, then you've got something to work with, and you've got some information, then you can fast back.
Would you be confident in saying that by this time next year you will have a 0% ghosting rate in your team at Ericsson?
I think you'll ever get to zero.
Why don't you think you'll ever get to zero?
I think for those examples you just shared, I think there'll be scenarios where there'll just be odd scenarios like, a recruiter goes on leave and all of a sudden, he hands over to someone, or he potentially, a recruiter sort of he leaves the company, and then you've got all those recs are passed to someone. Things happen. Candidates get slipped through the cracks, and jobs slip through. So I don't think you'll ever get to zero.
I would say that my last prediction as well, and maybe this is like a nice kind of takeaway to end on, is as a result of application volumes remaining high due to or easy apply tools or auto apply tools, etc., and the job market being what it is, which I don't think will fundamentally change. Companies will increase the volume of sourcing they're doing, i.e., proactively reaching out to individuals on LinkedIn. And so I think one of the things you can probably invest in the most this year will be in your LinkedIn profile, like be it a public facing, like really clear, like responsibilities, focus, what you're looking for, with your information like up to date and the impact that you've had on businesses and the work and the role that you've been doing. Like all of these things will start to become increasingly important as companies source more and more and more. And so make sure that it's really clear. Like ask your friends to be like to review your LinkedIn and be like, is it clear what I've done here? Is it clear what I do? Like you don't know what I do, and a recruiter might not know the intricacies of what you do, but like could a normal person look at your LinkedIn profile and broadly speaking understand what it is that you did and what it is that you're looking for? And if like kind of you speak to 5 friends who all work in the same industry as you or business as you, and none of them understand that and can't answer that clearly, you probably missed something on your CV and or your LinkedIn and should look at it again, because that's what a recruiter is going to be doing every single day.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think I definitely see increase in sourcing. And I also believe there will be increase in recruitment agency usage as well on the back of the fact that volumes will go up. I think companies might be scared about putting an advert out in the future if they're just going to be spammed 100 in the first hour. So they'll in turn might decide that they might go to an agency to help them do that. Or we might see an increase, might see some companies offering screening as part of their service. Just kind of identify the candidates, and after that they manage that. But and then when it comes to recruitment agencies, they'll be sourcing heavily as well. So your LinkedIn profile again is another reason why to do it, because companies and might be using agencies, and they'll be searching on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. So maybe at the start of this year, then, as you kind of reflect on this year, let's think about the kind of the takeaways, right? Like updating your LinkedIn as soon as possible, I think and really making sure that it's easy to read. Look at Darren's toolkits, look at the stuff that I published online. Like there's a lot of information out there on how to actually write a good, and also some really good like free articles as well, with like how to write an about you section, how to write a good like top line, how to write like your actual chunks of experience, like there's lots of good content and free content out there. So I'd recommend starting there. Maybe reaching out to some of those agencies, like who are the agencies that have contacted you in the past, recruiting agencies, who are the top agencies in your area, ask your colleagues, ask your friends, like network around and see who they respect and who's got them jobs in the past. And then research the tools, the AI tools that are genuinely going to help you. Mass apply tools are not going to help you. ATS, like matching tools, are not going to help you. But like using ChatGPT to reflect on your skills and rewrite certain sections of your CV, or help you get better impact points or business outcomes or networking emails or whatever. Like really think of, or tracking on either Darren's tracker or Teal or something like that. Like go and find the tools that are really genuinely going to move you forward, rather than and be like really think about, if someone's charging you, what is the outcome that they're going to give you, and why is that the right outcome for me? Are they going to help me, or are they going to actually hinder me? What control do I have over the information that they're using my profile for? These are all like important questions to really, really reflect on that.
Yeah.
Anything you would add?
Just on if there's so much noise as well online, I think that you've got to continue just using your network, your referrals. I mean, that is still like fundamentally underutilized. You've got to get your CV out, send it out to friends. I think as an individual, and I don't know if you find the same, is that when you write your CV, you don't really share it with your friends so much. It's like it feels like maybe it's a shame thing. I think like I'm looking for a job, but having your CV, them networks with lots of different companies or people they know, huge advantage. I mean, the last 4 roles I've had is all through. I think the last 3 have come from referrals.
Yeah. I'm the same. Except the only job I haven't got through a referral was Zap. and I applied for that one. Muse was because I knew James, like, you know, all that sort of pro calls because I knew the team there. Like, it all comes from the like who you know. And so really thinking about like putting pen to paper and like, what is my networking strategy? How am I going to actually deploy this? What is the right messaging? Like, read How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's all there, really. Like, that. How do you project value and support people in understanding your value and impact? I can't tell you the number of messages I get on LinkedIn is like, can you find me a job? It's like, no, I'm not going to spend time. I can't, like, I can barely find time to go to the bathroom. I'm not going to help you find a job.
That's that is a problem. I get lots of those as well. And it's, can you find me a job at Ericsson? Here's my CV.
Yeah. No one's going to respond to that. But who in your network can support you and guide you and put you on the right path, review your CV for you or whatever? Like, people do have a lot of like positive faith they want to put back into the world. And so kind of use that where you can. Awesome. Darren, thank you so much for coming on today. Super excited for our collaboration as well in the Get Hired Toolkit and Open to Work Community newsletter. Where can people sign up for the newsletter?
So if you go to the Substack at the moment, it's you can search for Open to Work Communities Substack, or you can search for Get Hired Toolkit, I think .substack.com. That's where you can find it, and I'm sure you can put it. We can put it in the show notes as well. Yep. And then you can find me as well on LinkedIn. It's probably a place. I'm also very occasionally on X.
Yeah. Okay.
But we talk about us as a building that community are on there. But find me on LinkedIn, and happy to connect with you.
Yeah. Find Darren Bush on LinkedIn. He posts a lot of really useful and interesting content. You can find me as always on LinkedIn, and then definitely check out the Get Hired Toolkit Substack. It's in collaboration now with the Open to Work community. We're going to be posting all of our podcast episodes in there as well as maybe a couple of kind of key points and takeaways. So really keep an eye on this. This is a really kind of evolving feat here, and we're looking to provide as much value as possible to you as a job seeker every single week. So keep an eye on our LinkedIn pages and on the Open Community LinkedIn page as well, because there'll be plenty more updates to be shared. But thank you, Darren, so much for coming on today, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Honestly, it's been such a pleasure as well to be on here. Thank you, Matthew.